Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about episode 6 of Apple TV's The Changeling, entitled Aftermath. And that's what this episode is. It's the aftermath of the murder of Demon Brian, but this time for Emma instead of Apollo. This episode starts at the murder of Demon Brian and ends with the beginning of Emma's mission to find Flesh Brian. That's just what I'm going to call him. I spent a lot of time with this episode. As you can see, I didn't put it out Friday. It's now Tuesday, October 3rd. So I pretty much took most of the week to, I guess, kind of wrap my head around this episode. I was really struggling with that. You know, there were aspects of this episode that I liked or felt like I should like or would have otherwise liked, but for some reason just kind of fell kind of flat with me in this episode. And while I was watching it, I wasn't really into it. And once it was over, I kind of felt apathetic about it, but I couldn't really figure out why. And generally, as longtime fans of this channel would know, I can usually pinpoint pretty accurately what I don't like about something. But I figured if I let it marinate for a couple of days or something like that, rather than recording right away, I'd gain a clear understanding of how I felt and why, just spending some time thinking about it. And I was right. I did ultimately end up figuring out why this episode left me feeling, I guess, kind of empty. It felt like the episode existed solely to set up Emma's journey to find Brian, which is an important job, don't get me wrong. It's just unfortunate that I think that they took the whole episode to do it when, aside from the mole people thing, it just wasn't a very interesting journey. Like, even with the scene with the underground community, like, it didn't land for me as well as it would have on another show or even another episode of this show. Like, most of what preceded it was plotting and uninteresting. So it was actually kind of jarring to arrive at something so, like, tonally different from everything else we've seen on the show. So instead of being like, oh, this is cool, man, I'm like, oh, I can't believe they have this world like this. It was more of, my reaction kind of felt more like, does this show even know what it wants to be right now? And this is now 2 consecutive weeks of choices that I've just found puzzling, I guess. Like, I don't like questioning decisions because it makes it sound like I know better. But like, okay, so I'll just explain to you guys the things that I observe and how they make me feel. And that's why I call it puzzling. Like I said, last week, you guys remember there was a scene where the photographer was looking at the undeveloped picture as if he knew ahead of time it was going to be sinister. Like, I thought that was weird, right? Then there was that one girl who, like, what was her name? Like, Gail or something, who, when Apollo got to, like, the little community or whatever, she fell off that scooter. And then he helped her get back up. She immediately fell again, like, 5 feet later. Like, I thought that was weird. Even the fucking, the 45-minute self-timer on this guy's camera that allowed Emma to take a bath before she had to take this picture. But like, I can write that off as creative license, whatever, right? But then this week, I also thought it was weird how after killing the changeling, Demon Brian, we see Emma, like, escape from the apartment, but she escapes like a Batman villain. Like, and I'm like, isn't the point of the show supposed to be that there's not really anything wrong with Emma, and we should be more accepting and sympathetic when it comes to believing or empathizing with women who are experiencing postpartum symptoms. And it's just manifested on the show through, I don't think this baby is mine. You know, it's a demon baby. It's a changeling. But I feel like that's what we're supposed to be taking away, right? Like treat women who are dealing with postpartum with a little bit more sympathy and a little bit more empathy, and be more accepting of that. And that's just that message just presented with a demon baby instead, right? But I think a lot of what they're trying to accomplish hinges on the idea that Emma's behavior may look and seem irrational, but what she's saying is actually happening, and she's not crazy. So when you have her in a cloak sliding down a fire escape like she's Moon Knight, you undermine that idea, and like that just felt weird to me. And like I said, it's decisions that I find puzzling. Like, why did they do that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. Also, what the fuck was up with her sister Kim just randomly throwing her overboard? Like, not randomly, but just like with no warning. Like, it was just like, there wasn't even a, like, we can't pull the boat up to the island all the way, so you're gonna have to swim part of the way. Like, that didn't happen here, right? Or even an explanation of how and why Kim appears to so thoroughly be in on this whole adventure. You know, the last time we saw Emma and Kim together, wasn't it when Emma was getting the chains that she ended up tying Apollo with? Yeah, tying him up with before the murder. And Kim expressed concern over how she reminded Kim of their mother. And then she told her what actually happened with the fire. That whole thing, right? Now we're seeing them together again right after Emma has presumably done the deed. And it's almost like Kim is pushing Emma into doing this. Like the acquisition of the chains and this ferry trip, trip on this ferry that takes place in this episode, those two things could conceivably be on the same day. And I just feel like, how did we get from Kim, like, I'm worried about you, you reminded me of mom, to just like, you need to get the fuck on this island, get overboard, bitch. Like, why do we get to that? Like I said, that could potentially be the same day. So like I said, this is like things you just, I don't know, they just make me feel weird. Like I don't know, I just don't like some of these decisions. And then after the opening credits, we just see Emma getting like rowed to shore by someone else. And generally, I wouldn't even care too much about that. I don't need to see every minute detail. But this again kind of felt like a weird thing to me. Like, did she make an appointment or something? Like, how did they know where to find her, when to find her? There's a whole lot of conversation and planning that needed to happen for this initial meeting between Emma and Cal to take place. And planning between Emma and Cal and between Emma and Kim, and we saw none of it. And I feel like that shit's kind of important. And still, if the show was skipping over all the minute details, I'd certainly be willing to not harp on this one. But no, I had to sit through that long-ass scene of Emma finding that boat on the island, pushing the boat through the doors, pushing the boat into the water, watching the boat get too far away, then watching Emma fail to catch up to it, and then watching Emma drown, but then she didn't drown because thoughts of Apollo saved her. I just sit through that whole fucking pointless scene, but I don't get to, I don't get an explanation for, how she, like, I don't get to see anything of what happened to get Emma to the island. And I don't know, I strange decisions to me, man. And that was her her first trip to the island. To the mainland in this episode where she I said mainland, I meant island. That was her first trip to the island. And it was weird too to me in this episode seeing her go back and forth multiple times. Like and that's when I can't quite pinpoint why it felt weird, but I'm like, okay, so this is her second time back at the same place in the same episode. I guess it kind of felt like, and this isn't me saying this is what they should have done, but I guess what made it feel weird is it's kind of like, why didn't you get everything done while you were there? And that's what, and I didn't think that, but that's what it feels like when she goes to the mainland, goes back to the island, and goes back to the mainland again. And it's like, we know time passed and, all that kind of stuff. But like within the same episode, it made it feel weird. Like, I don't know, like there was some inefficient process during this whole situation. And this episode is really dragged in the middle. Like, aside from the underground community stuff, this was a whole lot of us watching Emma trying to figure out what kind of tree a stick came from. And like, I'm sorry, that's just not compelling television. And ultimately, we watched the events that took place immediately following Brian's murder, but what did we learn and how did we get there? We learned that Emma is on a mission to find Brian in this forest at a place called Little Norway. Okay, that's good information to take out of this episode. But how did we get there? We spent an entire episode watching Emma try to track down Brian using the stick and a leaf. Now, it's impressive that she was able to find success using that method, but it's not the most compelling episode of television to watch. Throwing all those other strange random moments, it seems like Emma's sitting in a tree with a notebook, and I'm just like, and I just feel like this is a compelling story that has something important to say that would have made for a much better show were it put in better hands. And I feel kind of shitty saying that, but that's how I feel. I'm sorry. I'll see you guys next week for episode 7. And until then, peace.